too many athletes like to add two different types of stress at the same time. They like to have speed and they like to add volume because more is always better. But most times you can only add one type of stress, because if you had two types of stress where you're increasing weekly volume and duration and speed, your body can only handle so much stress. All right, where am I going to find this? Am I going to reduce the total run volume and now we're going to do maybe 2 quality sessions a week where we push it a little bit? And is that going to be enough? And again, that goes back to planning your entire year. And so like when athletes say, hey, I'd like to work with you as a coach, when should I get started? I'm like, tomorrow.
And here we go with the Crushing Iron podcast.
Man, coming out of the gate strong.
I'm bringing it.
You're
fired up.
You're fired up? I mean, your version of fired up is like a flashlight. It's usually pretty tame, unless it's race week. And as we all found out, that fire can burn bright. But
I'm like a candle on the side of a bathtub.
That's exactly what you are. You're a nice scented flame. But hey, it's Thursday. It is September 19th, 2019. Welcome, Crushing Iron Podcast, episode 304.
You got it.
Man.
Do you ever not have your counter handy?
I'm at home today. We have some family friends coming in town, so I don't have my handy dandy counter ahead of me. In front.
Family friends.
Well, I mean, I say family friends, but I mean, let's be honest. Not all friends you consider family, and not all family you consider friends. Because that's just, you're related just for being related, so it doesn't, you just kind of fake it like you're friends. But no, these are the close friends of ours that we had, that we met while we were living in Kansas. So they have it was a girl who worked for me, and her husband, and they have a daughter named Emma who's around the same age as Hayden. They were both born around the same time, and now they live in Iowa, and then we live here, and so they're coming to visit for the weekend, and we're gonna do some of the Chattanooga touristy things.
Oh, you get to go out and tour Chattanooga again.
Yeah, and I think we're gonna hit up Rock City and the Incline Railway, which I'm actually excited about because I think the view's pretty good, and then I think we'll just do some other stuff for the kids. But no, just looking.
Have you ever been to the aquarium?
Have I been to the aquarium? It's like one of my favorite things, man. Like,
I know. I see like a picture. I feel like Hayden's there like every other week.
Yeah, I kind of like peer pressure him. I'm like, hey, buddy, you want to go to the aquarium today? I'll buy you some donuts. I'm a huge fan of obviously the aquarium, but no, we'll do some things and enjoy ourselves. And it looks like the weather is cooling off here, at least for the weekend. And then I hate to break it to you, Ironman Chattanooga people, but it is going to be warm again. It looks like next weekend back up in the high 80s, low 90s. But if you sign up for the race, you ought to know better, because it's always going to be pretty much warm. It's like the Mother Nature basically saves the very last hot weekend of every year for the weekend that they have Ironman Chattanooga. So
I know. I keep waiting for him to just slide it back a week.
And I think everybody signs up. They're like, "This is it, man. This is the year." It's kind of like Louisville in what, 4 weeks? Everybody's like, "It's no way it can be like it was the last 2 years." There's just no way. And the same thing can be said about Ironman Chattanooga, because the last few years, the first year, I think, as you love it with inaugural races, the first year or two, I think it was pretty seasonably perfect. I know the year you did it was pretty close to perfect, but the last year was not as warm, but the previous 2 years were just brutal. And everybody, I think, when they sign up, they're thinking, yeah, this is my year. I'm going to sign up, because there is no way it's going to be as hot as it was last year. And the same thing for Louisville, which I don't know if, I'm sure we have a lot of athletes. I know we have athletes racing Louisville, but then I know we probably have a lot of people listening to this podcast, all 37 of you. And I bet a couple of you are racing Louisville, but got a few not really panicked, but more disgruntled, frustrated text messages yesterday, because they have changed yet again the Ironman Louisville run course. I believe it's 3 loops, and quite a bit more elevation
Did they
within
go
people that
up on the
participate.
walking bridge? That's what I wanted.
They didn't. I glanced at it and I kind of joked aside, and someone was like, "Hey, I think it's twice the elevation that it had originally." And I was like, "So what? It went from 150 to 300? I mean, big deal." But I think I saw 800. But anyway, but yeah, it's a busy time of
3
year
loops, huh?
to see the 3 loops. I know, which I'm a loop guy. I love loops, for loops especially. But because I like it for pacing. I like it for pacing, and I like to know what you're gonna get. Um, one of my best races was on multiple loops like that. I mean, the bike course isn't like that, obviously, which is a good thing. But yeah, I could see where that 3 loop run can and might cause, some frustrations.
No,
Uh,
I'm with you. I think it's all right. I mean, to me, this is all about spectators, really, at that point.
it's 100% about
It should
spectating.
be like easy to see people. I think that's a good thing. But I think I told you when I ran that course, I wonder if they've cut down how far you run, sort of, I don't know how to explain it, but um, instead of like towards where the bike course goes out the other way, because I ran down that way and I was
Mhm.
like, man, it's going to be dark city down here, man. There's like
Yep.
no lighting. I wonder if they cut part of that section out and just
I'm
decided.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'll look into it a little deeper, and then I'm sure we'll do an Ironman Louisville pre-race kind of preview. You and I have done it, I think, like 5 or 6 times combined between the two of us. So we know the course well. We always have
Well,
athletes
we knew the
there.
old course.
Yeah, we know the old course. Yeah, nobody knows this like real, but we know the important stuff, which is the swim and the bike, and a good portion of the run. So I'll look into that. We'll do a little pre-race Ironman Louisville course, and then next Monday we'll do a little Ironman Chattanooga recon, as Hugh and I will both be obviously in town for that race, and then we'll be we booked our hotel yesterday for Ironman Louisville, so we'll be there spectating and having a good time. You're recovered. We've gone pretty in depth. This is like our last 2 podcasts have basically been all about you and your training
I
and
know.
and so I mean, it's and hey, for those of you that are just now joining us, they are probably we've gotten a lot of good feedback on the last couple of podcasts, and I think so. If it's your first time listening, we appreciate you joining in and tuning in, give us an opportunity. This is a triathlon related podcast, but we do talk about a lot of things that don't specifically relate to swim, bike, run training, but that we cover the mental and emotional aspects of your life and the emotions and kind of challenges that we all go through in our daily lives. And then hopefully what we do is we help you incorporate those with your training to help you create a really sustainable training and triathlon environment to allow you to do this for as long as you want, without getting burnt out, with keeping a good perspective, and hopefully learning from Mike and I's mistakes as both coaches and athletes, and then obviously the athletes that we work with, some of their successes and some of our pitfalls, and hopefully you don't have to go through the same. So that's what we do. In the last few episodes, we've really kind of dove pretty deep, which is kind of a first time in the podcast. We've kind of dug a little bit deeper into your training exactly, and in the last podcast was more of like a seasonal training review of you and your race and your training that we just kind of did live, and it got a lot of good feedback, and
Yeah.
of course
Some of the more listened to podcasts. Maybe we should keep talking about me.
Seriously, we should talk about you all the time. I mean, like,
dive into my psyche.
Yeah, I
we
mean,
could go right into Ironman depression here in part 3.
If we didn't already know this, then you were definitely the fan favorite of the podcast.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Look, dude, you're the man.
We
I'm
have
just
like
kind of along for the ride
cop,
here.
definitely the good cop. You say a lot of great things.
Thank you.
You do. You have a lot of great theories.
They just take a lot of time to kind of figure out, I think.
That's
even for everyone and myself. So
it's all about patience. But anyway, so I mean, I got a few things I wanted to kind of touch on today. But I was sensing a post Ironman depression chat.
No.
No, okay.
Good. I'm really not. Honestly, my whole depression revolves around a couple different mistakes I made. And we talked about that, so there's no real need to go into it. Although the one thing I did and this is so weird, right? Because we talk about this stuff all the time, and you talk about it constantly, and I'm almost embarrassed to say it, but the swim again. Uh, we harp on this constantly, how open water swimming is different than pool swimming, and a major part of that is just being strong and aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I went in there a little bit soft, dude.
Oh.
I was concerned. My thought was like, okay, uh, I was really concerned about swimming extra distance, so I was like really went in focused on the sighting portion of it. But and for me, that just meant, all right, let's just make sure you're swimming straight, and not swimming strong. And I think I just went into it with the wrong. And then of course the weather and everything didn't cooperate. It made it like a legit open water swim that needed to be, you know, taken. Not, I really needed to be aggressive, and I think I was a little bit, not aggressive. But anyway,
Yeah.
we don't need to get into that too much. But those are the kind of things that are bumming me out more than. And I know I got to let it go, but you know what I'm saying? It's a
I mean,
reflection.
I don't personally, because I never experienced that, because I love the contact. And to be fair, you used to have that same mentality. So I don't know if it was the lack of swapping some paint in open water sessions that kind of left you with that. But I kind of ribbed on a couple other athletes that I work with, and have gotten emails from other athletes that can throw down some like incredibly solid swim times. But then when you get put in the open water, like, I just don't know why I can't put it together.
Mm-hmm.
And I do. I think there's a mentality you have to have, and then there's you know a strength and purpose that you have to have when you get in, knowing that this, I don't want to say stay in your lane, but when you take swims like that on, like you're taking, you have taken into account the distance, the direction, the current, the waves, the chop, the sighting, and the other 2,500 people that are in there. And I
Yeah.
think that, again, like, if you want to go back and listen to like one of like the 5, I think, How to Not Suck at Swimming podcast we have, that always seem to be a fan favorite. That's one of the things that I just harp on, is that people just, for whatever reason, and they just continue to just totally ignore why there is such a difference in swimming in the pool and swimming in open water.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't necessarily think you have to, swim open water every single week, or even even every other week in the summertime. But I do think you have to put yourself in situations that have exposure like that, in conditions, maybe once a month, or enter some open water swim races. I think those are great opportunities. They're not going to like shell you, in training, like doing an open half marathon or a 10K on the run, or a hard, bike race or anything like that. So I think there's opportunities there. And then obviously, pick races that are going to replicate the race you really, really want to hit. So like, if so we'll just use again you for an example. Like, you did Chattanooga 70.3, and that was the last time you had any contact in the water, and it was probably little to zero, because A, the swim is shortened, and B, it was totally downstream.
Yeah.
So you had like 25 minutes, maybe, if that, of swimming. But again, it's all downstream, and I think sometimes athletes just ignore, or either ignore on purpose, or just don't recognize how different it is to swim in a downstream, like Ironman Chattanooga, that's coming up this next weekend. Like, the differences in those swim courses are like, they're night and day. From, obviously, we're talking about Wisconsin, and the amount of people that you have to navigate, and the amount of people you're going to come in contact with. And well, it's still 2.4 miles, and it's still 3,000 people. Well, a couple things. One, the rate and the difference between how well you can navigate and how straight you can swim, and the conditions you have to make it through and swim through in a course like Wisconsin versus a course like Chattanooga going to be in the water a significant amount of time less than you would be in Wisconsin. And the differences in good swimming and poor swimming, those are like highlighted to the max on a course like Wisconsin. Again, because of how things are so difficult, and with the current, the wind, the chop that you have to sight, you have to make turns. And that's also the reason why the crowds become more congested, because it's a fair, anytime you have a fair course, like for the same exact reason you don't hear, after races like Ironman Florida or Arizona or Maryland, like, you'll see all these comments and posts and threads about the drafting packs. There are so many drafting packs, people just sitting on wheels and drafting. You don't hear that about Wisconsin, because the bike course is so fair. There, you have to race it solo, and the differences between strong cyclists and weak cyclists are maximized because of how difficult the course is. And the same can be said for swimming. So you take a course like Chattanooga, though, where you're in the water for less time. You have to basically swim straight. It's like, and it's the visibility is very easy. There's not going to be any chop. I mean, if there is chop, you're probably like, thank goodness, because if there is, that means the current is even stronger. So you're going to come out of the water in, 15 to 20% less time. And so how you get into the water too is different, because you're going to be spread out a little bit different. So you're basically not even going to be touched. I mean, you might see like a few people, but when you're going in a straight line versus going in a square, it's night and day. It is totally night and day. And so things are maximized on a course like Wisconsin versus a course like Chattanooga. And so, like, for you did Ironman Chattanooga, you did Chattanooga 7.3, you're in the water for what, like 20 something minutes? Maybe, not even. It's like it was a shortened swim.
18 maybe or something.
Yeah, so we'll just call it basically nothing. And you had like little to no contact. So now you're going to go for an hour longer, around there at Wisconsin. It's significant, and you're going to encounter more people in harder conditions. And it's just night and day. And again, like when we talked about, I know I talked about this a lot, and I don't want to talk about it anymore today, is that long course racing is all about energy expenditure. And when you have to battle other people, quote unquote battle, like, any of you triathletes know how to battle, that is like, it just takes out of you. It takes mental and emotional and physical energy, and you come out of the water wiped instead of fresh and feeling good. And then of course you look down at your watch and you're like, oh, okay, now I'm way behind. And it took me energy to work harder to not go as fast.
Yeah. So
now I'm behind the 8-ball.
But, I figured out, I think, exactly what happened. And it comes down to like how you talk about Chattanooga's downstream swim, and you would propose that somebody swimming that long and strong, right, going downstream.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's a lot of what I was working on, my long and strong stroke. And I think I was too habitualized into that kind of rhythm, and I should have been going shorter strokes.
Short, strong, yep.
I'm almost, because it was like you were swimming upstream with that chop. So in order to cut through it, I think that it really just boils down to that. I just think my turnover was too slow.
That could be that's a huge thing.
Yeah. So that's kind of where it comes back.
In fact, having a faster turnover. And so like if you want to split the hairs, since Louisville is getting closer, like that's Louisville cut into like 25% and 75%. The first part of Louisville is, quote unquote upstream. But let's not get ahead of ourselves here. It's like protected. It's not like flowing through like crazy, water rapids here, but it's going the other direction, and it's going to either be still, or you're going to have some kind of either a still water or a slight current getting to you. Now, I would tell you that the upstream part isn't that's protected, isn't the hardest part of the course. It's actually when you make that left turn to come outside of like the island, to make that really weird kind of U-turn, basically, that's really long and wide, because you're when you're actually exposed to the actual current. So you thought you were swimming against a quote unquote current, where it's protected, and you will, but it's going to be significantly stronger once you come out of that protection. And so you always tell athletes, and I'm telling you right now that's listening, like from the start, to not just the turnaround curve, but the start all the way till you turn your body all the way going back towards the bridges. You need to be prepared to have a fast turnover. You need to be prepared to just kind of start out faster than you really would most other races, because you want to get up and ahead of, you want to get through the current, a faster arm turnover, not getting pushed backwards and getting around. And then once you make that turn, well, then it's time to go long and strong, because that's when you really want to let the current do a lot of the work. Plus, if you have a current behind you, the longer and more purposeful your strokes are, and especially the back end of your stroke, you're going to be pressing against water longer that's already pressing against your hand. So it's really kind of a tale of two different courses. But I do, and we'll talk about this in the next 2 weeks or so, but that curve at Louisville is the hardest part, because also that's also when the sun's coming up. And I know a lot of people have difficulty with the glare as the sun is like barely creeping up, because you just go through a time change, I think, and it's like coming out at like 7:15, 7:20, and so it's hard to see, and you have to kind of loop around these buoys to finally get, and people have a very, very hard time navigating that.
Yeah, you're gonna have to. I agree. I think that from the point of that island out to that turn buoy, it's 300-400 yards, whatever it is. But I think you need to be prepared up there, like to start going, because I've swam it this summer, and as you get towards the end there, that current does start picking up. So I would just say be prepared to swim pretty hard for like 500 or 600 yards. As you get towards the end of that island, you're gonna want to start kind of digging a little bit, and that faster turnover, it's going to be the hardest part for sure. And then, as you say, you kind of, if you can navigate the glare and get around that buoy, and then it's kind of like,
long, you're good to go. Yeah, but yeah, no, I think that's the mentality. I think we kind of get not fooled, but kind of just lazied into what we know, what we think, and then we get good at it, and so we want to stay there, like long and strong. Some athletes are really, really good at long and strong, and a lot of pool swimmers are good at long and strong. And because they can get away with gliding too. And then you enter a race like Wisconsin, well, you ain't got time for that. Like, and if you're not ready to have a faster turnover, and you haven't done fast 25s and fast 50s to have that feeling of being anaerobic and moving your arms very, very fast, and you go to race day, well, you're going to get winded and spent immediately. And again, it comes down to training and how you're training for specific courses. And just, the last thing I'll say about swimming is, like, there is no substitute for 25s and 50s and 100s, and doing a lot of them and doing them fast. But very, very, very few people do them. And it's because it's hard. And because I'll tell you this, I've said it a million times on the podcast, swimming, and even having done it as much as I have over the course of my entire life, hard swimming, it to me is significantly harder than anything else that you do in triathlon, because it's so anaerobic and you can't stop, and the breathing is more difficult. That's why people don't do it. But again, it's also the best way to get faster and be a better open water swimmer.
It's good stuff, man.
Yeah, I don't want to make this how to not go swimming number 6. So we won't go there. What else you got? You got anything else? Because I had a couple things I was gonna
no, I think
chime in on.
Why don't you lay them out there and see what happens?
So I was gonna delicately touch on. So yesterday I was at the office, and I had a few 30 to 45 minutes of quote unquote free time that I was kind of ahead of schedule and got everything done. And so I did a little Q&A inside of our closed active athlete group. I had a couple good questions, and then did a Mike Turali version whiteboard session, nice, which but I can already see, like, if your mom ever gets a hold of it, I can already hear right now. She'll be like, yeah, I don't know, you might want to let Mike stick to the whiteboard. That's his thing. But no, so I got on the whiteboard, and what I really did was just try to, like, in a simple way while being specific, because again, I think it can be both, and I think it can be specific and simple all in the same time without making things like incredibly confusing. And that's like one of the more difficult things in the sport, I think, for athletes that are either coached and don't know the reasons or the whys behind certain things. And then also athletes who are self-coached, but there is so much information out there on what to do, what not to do, how to train, how not to train, when to do something, when not to do something, what's necessary, how long of a ride, how long of a bike ride, how long of a run, when should I have my nap, how long should my taper be? There's just so much information. So it can be confusing, but you can be simple and specific all at the same time and get the message across. And so I spent a good, 15 to 20 minutes kind of going over broadly, because you have to be broad when you're not specifically talking about a individual, because and again, a lot of people will look to one specific individual and see how they were able to do well, and then just directly basically cut and paste it to themselves and apply it and think that's how I should get better too. And that's not the case. Like Michael Phelps freestyle, you're not Michael Phelps. Or Lance Armstrong cadence of like 95 to 100, you ain't Lance Armstrong. And hopefully you're not doped up either. But so don't apply this. You have to be very general while just still giving enough information so that athletes can kind of feel empowered. And so I went through a few things. I went through something that, again, I talked a little bit about with you as we kind of went in depth with your training and where things might have gone, where things might have happened too early, and so I went through basically like a breakdown of the different cycles that you see with athletes and that coaches usually map out for you, in that you've got something called a macro cycle. Wait, first, did you watch this video?
Yeah.
You did? Okay. Did you think it was any good?
No, I loved it. Didn't I?
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Just making sure, man.
I texted you sweet.
Oh, well, yeah, you texted me sweet, and then you said something like, you still got like a couple more pounds to lose, don't you? And I was like, yeah.
And I did not.
No, you
I'm 100% behind you as a trainer.
You wouldn't say that. But no, so I went through what kind of the definitions and the timing and the links of specific cycles. And so, when you're planning out your year, and again, I touched on this a little bit on the previous podcast. If you haven't listened to it, definitely need to listen to 303, I think, because this is 304, right?
Yep.
Yeah, see, I'm on it. Are cycles, and you have your macro cycle, which obviously macro meaning like this is every week of the year, from start A to start, from point A to point Z. And then you've got smaller chunks, which I would call like specific training blocks, which could be 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 9 weeks, 10, 12, whatever they need to be in order to get what you want out of them. And then obviously you've got much smaller, and that's called a mesocycle. And then you have something else called a microcycle, which are very, very obviously micro, meaning that's going to be the smallest, is these are shorter durations. And so I gave example of those and what you might focus on those different cycles, and how coaches and maybe athletes that are self-coached look at the year in a whole. And again, we talked about this on Monday, and like that's also one of the hardest things for a coach to either explain or accomplish, while also establishing and maintaining trust and buy-in with the athlete, is that we always say there's only like 1 or 2 matches you can burn a year, and that you can only go to the well with your best fitness maybe twice, a year. And yeah, you're going to see pros race all the time, but they'll even tell you these aren't the races that I'm like tapering for. Like they might even just train right through them. So don't use that as like, hey, well, I can race well because they're racing. A lot of times they'll try to race themselves into shape, which is also something that I've seen athletes do with some success. I think it's hard to do. You have to be patient, but so when you see athletes map out a training calendar, you have to kind of say, all right, these are 4 weeks apart, these are 12 weeks apart, these are 16 weeks apart. Then you have to kind of backdate it and say, all right, well, we can probably peak for this one, so the phases before it are probably going to look like this, and then you're going to have kind of an unload period after this race, and then we got a chance to kind of go back after it again. But one of the most difficult things for athletes to understand is that you can't go up all the time. You can't just increase load all the time. And athletes think that you can increase, and that's how you get better. But your body can only withstand so much, and you can get overtrained so easily. And once you get overtrained, it might take you weeks, and it might take you months to shed all of the fatigue that you built up just by trying to acquire fatigue and have it being validated by the fact that you think being tired means getting fitter. And so you have to unload. So you'll see an athlete get really great shape because they went through a huge load. But if you don't unload them enough and let them rest a little bit, you can't go back and re-peak and have it go higher. You might be able to get back to kind of the same place you got before, but then that's not improving. So you have to unload too. So I just went through the different cycles. Then again, obviously, it's easier to see as well. Like our weapon athlete that I work with, who works, not a Monday through Friday 9 to 5 schedule. Like a lot of people, there's a lot of people who think that that's like impossible to work with, but that just means you have to get a little more creative with what you do on the days that you work, and then what you do on the days that you don't work. And so I just kind of went through the different cycles and opportunities you have within those to maximize and have your good year, and then kind of how we use that as building blocks from the first month to the end month, and then how those kind of stack themselves by creating hopefully the best version of you, and that you can't do it all at once. And I think, again, that's one of the most common misconceptions that triathletes have, because they want it all right now. Like I don't want to wait. I don't want you to tell me this is a process. I don't want you to tell me that getting faster takes time. I want you to give me track workouts so I can see me getting faster tomorrow, although it's only for 200 meters and I can't do anything else the rest of the week. I want to see it right now. And so when you explain that to athletes, again, it's nice to see how you're going to build them and equip them. And I guess what I would say is, you have an athlete that starts with you in January and you give them a blank toolbox, nothing in it, or I guess empty one's probably a better word. You give them an empty toolbox. There is nothing inside, zero. Mm-hmm. And then on race day, 9 months later, you're going to ask them to build the perfect race. And that race might be hilly, it might be flat, it might have an easy swim, it might be a hard swim. So you can't just give them all those tools at once, because they won't know how to use them, and they won't be able to use them appropriately. You give them, so basically each, mesocycle or 3 to 4 week block or recovery cycle, whatever it is, you're building and acquiring new tools that you can now keep and use. Hammers, saw, screwdriver, drill, whatever it is, going all the way down the line. So on race day, we need to build and execute the perfect race with the plan laid out for you. You have them all, and you don't just have them all. You've acquired them, you own them. And now you can build and execute the perfect race. Not, well, I tried to get them all at once, so I kind of know how to use them, but I can't really. And no, it's the analogy I'm trying to give you here is that, like, you have to build upon these things. You can't just, half-ass your way to randomness. And again, and I tell us that, we said this on the podcast, that's why I also think, like, variety is for the weak. People I think sometimes it's a misconception that you think coaches that give you the same workout all the time just aren't creative. When the reality is if you want to execute something perfectly, you got to do it more than once. And that's also how you see productivity and execution, and how an athlete's adapting, which is also falling back on a reason that, like, I think testing has its place, but I think people put way too much weight behind testing and put they stack their cards with it and they think it's like the end all be all, and they do it too often. But so I kind of went through the whole generality, or that general kind of layout and outline of a year, and where you might see specific things depending on the athlete. So we could talk a little bit about that today, but I guess the better way to go is, like, if you did watch it, which you say you did, then what did you think about it? Or did you have any questions, or what stood out to you, or what was like, now I see why this is the way it is? Or maybe as we kind of generally looked back at your own training on Monday, did you see opportunities that we missed or that we could exploit next time to make, turn liabilities into strengths?
Mm-hmm. The first thing I thought of when you were just saying that was I spent most of the year building caulk guns for my. I was like, how am I going to patch up this whole situation?
The people who are hard of hearing, he said caulk. Culk. Yeah, there's an L in there. Just wanted to clarify.
My bad.
Yeah, just wanted to clarify.
Jeez, man, my head was not there at all. Yeah, I was just thinking about patching up little wounds, and not wounds, but honestly, man, my thought. And we we definitely talked about it before, but maybe I got a little bit too, I don't want to say overconfident, but like I just think I don't want to say lazy, but I definitely feel like, and this also kind of popped up when you posted that thing about the guy who said, um, about how your aerobic catches up faster than your body. What was that quote?
Yeah, so Greg McMillan, who is like one of the more renowned run coaches, basically like on the planet, but he had a quote that I posted in the Crushing Iron group, which again we talk about this all the time in terms of like building your chassis. As he said, your cardiovascular fitness can improve at a faster rate than your muscles, tendons, bones, ligaments, and fascia can tolerate. This is the reason so many runners get injured. Your plan must respect this and allow time for the musculoskeletal system to catch up and become more durable. Again, which is like the opposite of what people want to hear. They don't want to be patient, but that is, but yeah, that's what he said.
Yeah, so that was what resonated with me hard, man, was that, and this goes all the way back. I don't know if you remember the first Ironman you trained me to, and there was a point, I think we were doing Wisconsin, so it was probably around maybe the end of July,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a run. We all met over at a barbecue joint, and you looked at us and you said, "All right, you've done the endurance work and the chassis building. Now it's time we're going to work on speed."
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember exact date. I think it was July or something like that. And the other guys are like, "Oh man, I don't know," like, and that made sense to me. And I think that's the part that I sort of let slip. And I don't mean like track workouts per se, but just in general, hard driving kind of stuff like zone 4. I
Mm-hmm.
think I neglected my zone 4 work, and that was running. I mean, I was running a lot, and I was running, at speeds that I would not probably get to during the race, and I thought I was enough, but I don't think I was just pushing that hard enough on the bike or the
Mm-hmm.
run, and certainly not the swim. Although I was going long and strong. I think my chassis was there
Mm-hmm.
because of what we started last fall with my run, and maybe my bike chassis didn't get up there, but I still don't think I did enough hard work, fast, like speed work.
Well, let me ask you this, and this again, like this is the reason why I am so pro hill work
Hmm.
and big gear work uh, on cycling and running. Is those two are great ways to allow those two different systems, your aerobic system, and then obviously your bones, joints, ligaments, tendons, everything else, to stay closer together versus going and distancing themselves further apart. So let me give you another analogy. So you've got, Timmy the trainer who goes to the gym and he's walking the 24-hour fitness and he's like, all right, dude, I'm gonna go rip it up on the leg extension, bro. I'm gonna go hit my 6 reps of, leg extension. He can do like 200. Total leg extension. So both legs extending out. If you don't know what a leg extension machine is, I don't know how to describe it, and I can't help you. But so let's say he does 200. But now you ask Timmy Trainer to come back tomorrow, and you ask him to do single leg extensions, only one at a time.
Hmm.
He's obviously not going to do 200, but what he's also more than likely not going to be able to do is do 100 on each side. Very rarely you see an athlete be able to just perfectly do 100 on each side because you're going to have weaknesses. You're going to have one leg that's a liability, one that can probably push 105, one that can probably push 95. So another trainer might say, all right, you need to do leg extensions until what? Single leg extensions till what? Those match.
Hmm.
The same could be said for if you have athletes that are doing single leg extensions at 100 and 105 for their quads, and then you turn around and have them do single leg curls. This is now your hamstring, and you see a huge difference in quad strength and hamstring strength. So you might see your hamstrings only be able to do 50, Well, a good trainer would say, all right, we need to slow down. Obviously, your quads are always going to be more powerful than your hamstrings, more than likely, but you want them still to be closer together, because if you don't and you continue to only work on your quads and you get them to do, they're doing like 115, 120, single leg, and your hamstrings are at like 50, well, now you're just looking to get injured, because you have one putting so much more power and effort and work, and the other one is just continuing to get weaker and fall behind and becomes a liability. That same separation is what you see with athletes who only want to work on speed all the time. They're working on something that's short, okay, and then it's not going to develop them in a way that's going to allow their chassis to support the engine that their ego is so bent on building. But if you do hill work, you can help bridge that gap. You can still be anaerobic, you can still be aerobic and still work that aerobic engine, but what you're also doing is you're helping strengthen those ligaments, tendons, bones, and you're help building a solid foundation, but you're not putting the pounding on it. For the same reason why, and I think sometimes we forget this, is, and I was reminded of this yesterday as I did my long run, and I had a huge hill to do, that cardiovascular wise, I was just like trashed going up it. It was a huge hill. My legs were a little bit tired, but my bones, my ligaments, everything, they felt fine. It was a good cardiovascular work, and I could tell I was becoming more durable. But today, as I went down this downhill stretch, I was like a mile and a half long. You want to know what I'm more sore from? The downhill. Yeah, easy. My quads are a lot more sore than I anticipated from the downhill. When I got almost little to no work, my speed was faster, but it wasn't like I was doing extra work. I wasn't increasing any kind of durability or strengthening my chassis. And so again, that is why I'm such a huge fan of hill work. And again, you might feel slower, or it might not be the pace you want to put on Strava, and it's not the miles per hour you wanted on your long ride, but elevation and hills are the greatest thing for you. Big gear work is so underrated, it's not even funny. And then the same hills in the run. And so that's how you bridge that gap in maintaining and still improving your aerobic efficiency and improving your cardiovascular system, but at the same time helping your the structure of your body, the integrity of your skeletal system, all the things that are required to run, not just run fast. Again, like for the sake of conversation, we're talking about 70.3 and longer distances. Remember, it's not about how fast you go. It's about who slows down the least. And so your speed is basically meaningless if you can't hold it for a long period of time. Mm-hmm. And so again, like, it should be mixed in there, but only if you're partnering it and combining it with the other side of that, which is being able to hold up for a long period of time.
Well, again, I wonder in retrospective, and I mentioned this, like I don't think I did enough high turnovers, work in the pool, hard work in the pool. Although, I mean, I worked hard. I just feel like I did a lot of the chassis stuff, and I wonder, like, I don't know if I didn't. I worked a lot of hills, certainly running. I mean, I ran hills every single time I ran, just about. Mm-hmm. And a lot. Obviously, I go to the lab to ride a lot, and that's kind of into the wind. I mean, so there was like strong work, and then riding hills at the trace, and I would find my hills and stuff like that. So I did a lot of that, but I just don't know if I, toward the end, would have benefited maybe with some more explosive stuff, shorter explosive stuff, because I got done with that. This is probably easily the best I've ever felt after an Ironman. So, I mean, I don't know what that says, but
well, it says a lot. It says a lot. And
I felt good about that.
You should, and I think that's a great thing. But I think, and where I want to go with this, and I don't know if we have time to go into the whole thing, but is you say, like, I feel like I was working hard in the pool, or I feel like I was working hard, I was doing the right kind of runs, and I thought I was, and I was doing the right kind of rides. Do you feel like because this is really common with a lot of athletes who develop and are doing things they haven't done before. Do you think your mind was, I don't want to say giving your body too much credit, But do you think your mind was stuck back to a year or two ago when you'd be doing these things, think this is it, like this is all I got to do? Because then you were a different athlete, you were a slower athlete, versus now the demands are increasing. You know, things need to be changed up. You have to be asking your body to do different things so you can be better. Do you think you kind of found yourself uh, falling back into that trap of, you know, this is what I've always done and it's always been hard and this is what has gotten me to where I am, versus maybe I'm a better athlete, maybe I'm more durable, maybe things need to be tweaked in order to now squeeze out that next 10%?
Well, I can tell you exactly what I was thinking is that I felt like I was a way stronger runner,
Mm-hmm.
and I was, back to that who slows down the least. I felt like,
Mm-hmm.
man, I was like ready to run, and it was a similar feeling that I had, and it, you know, we could. I just don't want to go into like forever on this stuff, but if the bike were maybe stronger, then maybe I could have. I don't know. It's all I know is that I started back at it this week, and I just felt pretty fine. You
Mm-hmm.
know, so I was looking at it more in terms of like the strong, the big gear work. I worked a lot of big gears. I did work a lot of hills. I worked a lot of like long intervals at with big gears and long hill runs and all this kind of stuff. I was really working on that strength thing, and I just wonder if like the part about the mind. I wonder if I was not. You know how like running, if you start seeing like I can pretty much say like in previous years I was probably seeing a lot faster paces on my runs before
Mm-hmm.
than I was this year. But I was seeing, like low eights consistently at the end of pretty long runs for me, and that was like good, but I wasn't dipping into the, sixes and sevens very much at all. And, whether that's I wasn't doing enough of those type Moneghetti type runs, or like pushing my intervals a little harder, that was the thing. I was just trying to be solid all the way,
Mm.
instead of like, you know, uh, shredding myself a little bit.
I think that's the age old debate question. It's the percent that not keeps coaches up at night, but gives them pause for looking back at things again, or how much should we push the needle?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah.
with cycling, with cycling and running, you can just get away with it. I mean, because it's like they're no impact. You can
You
get away
said
with it. You
swimming.
can.
You said
Yes, swimming and cycling
yeah.
are you can get away with it with swimming and cycling because they're no impact. You can push the needle, no impact, with very, very minimal risk to injury. Running, totally different ball game. In terms of pushing the needle, in terms of, like, we've talked about this a couple of times on podcasts, like that day that the first year I was coaching you and you thought you're going out for a 60-mile ride, and I pulled up next to you making our second loop back with a group, and I said, hey man, we're going 100 today, and you were like, excuse me. And then we ended up doing like 115 on like this epic day on the trace where it was pouring down rain, and probably it's, well, besides like our Chattanooga is probably your longest ride to date. But I would never have done that running. I wouldn't have like seen you in a 10-mile run and be like, hey, guess what, Mike? I'm running 20 today, buddy. Like,
Mm-hmm.
no, because it's too much risk. But again, like, that's where, and again, like when you see athletes who perform well, and I say well, I mean like perform at a very high level, you don't know often what the breaking point is until you get there. And
Mm-hmm.
and that's the percentage that, again, like, I don't want to say it keeps coaches up at night, but is where coaches have to just be so careful and so cautious, yet also so confident that there's still more to squeeze out. How do we do it? How do we do it the right way? How do we do it that's going to get this extra, because again, like, to use another analogy, is like, it's easy to drop minutes off your 5K, but once you get down to like the 100, you're not even looking for seconds anymore. You're looking for like tenths of a second. And so when you look to like Ironman training or 70.3 and the longer distance runs, like half marathons and full marathons, to gain the extra speed on top of making sure your body is still durable, it's like, where am I going to apply the different stress to get the different stimulus to get me to where I want to go? And that, I think, is one of the most difficult parts of coaching and working with athletes, and making sure that you're paying attention. And I'll say this, as I touched on it yesterday in that video, is that, too many athletes like to add two different types of stress at the same time. They like to have speed, and they like to add volume, because more is always better. But most times you can only add one type of stress, because if you had two types of stress where you're increasing weekly volume and duration and speed, your body can only handle so much stress. And stress, again, and how much load you're applying to an athlete and asking them to handle, and the stress it's going to create, which is in turn is going to, cause their body to adapt and gain the stimulus, is that, all right, where am I going to find this? Am I going to reduce the total run volume, and now we're going to do maybe two quality sessions a week, or push it a little bit? And is that going to be enough? And again, that goes back to planning your entire year. And so, like, when athletes say, hey, I'd like to work with you as a coach, when should I get started? I'm like, tomorrow. Like, sooner is always better. Not because of starting up right now is just a reason, let's get started today. It's because now you have time to plan. Planning for 12 months is a lot easier and safer and more purposeful than planning in 3, because then you're like, all right, we kind of are where we are. I can't push the needle. I can't we just have to make sure we do things as good as we can and get to the race day as best as we can, versus having the whole laid out, like I was talking about earlier in this podcast about kind of the periodization and the different cycles, is giving yourself more time to, instead of like breaking down, it's like, all right, Mike, we got to squeeze another 5% out of your Ironman marathon. Where are we going to get that from? Mm-hmm. Now the question is, how do we get there? And that answer is usually going to take multiple blocks, multiple weeks, instead of, okay, we're just going to go down to short, hard runs. That's not the answer, because then we're losing durability, and so it's just, again, like, it takes time. And that's, again, like, why you have to look at the big picture, and being able to plan that out is just something, it's just something that I think is often overlooked in terms of when you can squeeze out those last little bits of the percentage of performance that you're looking for. And again, like, that's also why, like, the athletes that perform really, really well have been doing the same process for years and years and years. It's consistency and accumulated fitness over a long period of time, and taking small, very, very, very small, almost unnoticeable gains each day that turn into massive gains at the end of the year. You do it over and over again. But yeah, it's about planning and the process and finding those percentages, while also, yes, keeping the year and its plan integrity intact, but also, how willing are you as a self-coached athlete or a coached athlete to push your athlete to that brink of, this may be too much, but we won't know until we do it. And we don't know if your body can handle it until we do it. And I think, again, like, therein lies one of the hardest parts of peaking and reaching the next level, is being courageous enough to take that step.
Mm. Yeah, you got to find out, right? It's like, it's almost like that. You just got to make some mistakes or whatever and learn from them. And I don't want to say mistakes, but you know what I mean? Like, you have to push yourself over a little bit. And in a way, that's kind of how I approached Wisconsin after I got out of the swim. I was like, all right, let's see what I can do. And I didn't have it, but I learned, that I learned a lot from that race, actually, and especially since we've been talking about it a lot. And I think that's a good thing. I'm definitely not, back to the first part of this, I'm definitely not post-race depressed by any means, but I'm anxious and curious to figure out, because I think I'm still right on that cusp, and if we can figure out, the little strategy and the blocks that we need to take to go forward. I think I'm right there.
But again, that's the hardest part.
Yeah.
Is like, it's, I'm like analogy Adam today, like back to another analogy. It's like you got 80 pounds to lose. Losing those first 60 are the easiest 60 to lose. You can stick with the same diet. Things are simple. There's not already too much to do, or too much to change. You just don't eat as much and you work out some. But then the more and more you get closer to like your maximum like weight you can lose, now you're not losing pounds and pounds a week. Now you're losing like ounces or a half pound a week. And so things become more difficult. You got to be more strict with your diet. You got to be more, delicate with what you do and more purposeful, and you don't have so much room for error. So it's the same thing with fitness. You got to tweak things. You got to change things. You got to be willing to adapt and look at things with, under a microscope and think, hey, this is working, this isn't working, or this is working really well. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. Maybe we just need to change a few spokes.
Yeah. Speaking of analogies, I've been writing about the race a lot, and it kind of dawned on me, like when you talk about like AA and how people stop drinking or whatever, and they go into the program, and obviously you've been there. So a lot of times I've heard, that stopping drinking is the easy part.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's all about the spirituality, the evolution and the work and the program and evolving. And I kind of think that's what sort of getting into triathlon is like a little bit, like pulling the trigger and joining it, signing up for a race is kind of the easy part. And then you do a few races and you're kind of like, oh, that the momentum of all that kind of pushes you. And then at some point you got to kind of wake up and go, I got a lot of work to do here. And this is like a committed, if you really want to get really good at it, the hard part is just starting, and it's a long process. And that's what I feel like I'm in.
Yep, I agree.
So the analogies keep coming.
Hey, man, it's the best. It's the way we learn.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, speaking of learning, we hope you learned something today on the Crushing Iron podcast. If you're coming in Chattanooga, reach out. I obviously live here, which is awesome. Reach out to Mike and I. Hopefully we connect. We'll be around. We have some athletes racing, and we'll be around town doing things and having fun and be out on course supporting you. And so let us know how we can do that. We'll be on the lookout. If you want to check out our website, you can always go there, crushingiron.com. It is the one-stop shop for all things gear, our club, some analysis, Mike's outstanding blog, and some of his just really, really good videos. And then coaching and training options are there as well. Again, that's crushingiron.com. And then if you want or have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can email me, c26coach@gmail.com, or Mike at crushingiron@gmail.com.
All right. Sounds good, man.
All right, dude. I'll see you next week.
All right. I'll talk to you on Monday. Oh, wait.
Oh, whoa.
We haven't talked about football at all. Quick one. We got a big game. Wisconsin, Michigan this weekend.
I'm pulling for Wisconsin all the way. I can't stand Jim Harbaugh.
I know. I think he's losing it, man.
I think he's so overrated.
Well, he is lately for sure. But I don't know. We'll see. It's going to be interesting.
He's overrated. I'll be rooting for you guys.
Who you guys got? Florida?
We got Florida.
Feeling good about that? Tennessee?
Well, unfortunately for them, their quarterback went down, I think, with a season-ending injury last week, which is always sad, and then that sucks. Florida's, Felipe, whatever his name is. But again, Gator fans are the worst. There's they're like a level above Bama fans. But
they come snaking out of their swamp. And
God, I know. They're like, going to the cocktail party. Woohoo, coming to the swamp. I'm like, you guys have been just as crappy as we have been for the last 8 years. I think we got a shot. And I think we have a shot just because we suck. And I'm hoping they're going to overlook us. I wouldn't be shocked if we won by 21-17. I wouldn't be shocked at that. not 21-17 because we absolutely are horrific in the red zone. So you can expect at least like 6 field goals from us. So maybe, I don't want to say 24.
16.
I'm gonna go. Yeah, I'm gonna go 24-17 if the Vols win. So I wouldn't be shocked if they did, but I also wouldn't be shocked if we lose by 55. So hey, that's just me being objective. So, but yeah, hey, we'll see.
Yeah, I'm calling a 2-touchdown win out of Wisconsin.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Listen, I'll say this and we can hop off and talk about it offline, but I think you guys, you're going to run them so hard. Traditionally, Michigan is like so overrated about how in shape they are. I bet you $10 they're gassed in the third quarter, and you guys just rip some like really long touchdown runs at the beginning, later parts of the third and early parts of the fourth quarter.
It's possible. I think
they're just too slow.
I don't know about that. I haven't really seen them, but I just know that I think this is our best passing game since Russell Wilson. That's what I'm excited about. Plus, we have a Heisman running back.
That's not saying a lot.
What?
Your passing attack?
It's pretty strong. I think this is our best group of receivers.
I know. What I'm saying is like it's not a lot to say this is like your best one since. It's not like you guys are USC of the 90s.
Yeah. I'm just saying. I think it might be our best ever.
Well, here we go again. This is what we can't talk. Saying now we've lost all objectivity. Yeah. Where we held it intact for most of the podcast, but now we're just losing it. Well, I can tell you from a Tennessee side, without a shadow of a doubt, this is the best equipment staff we have had in at least the last 20 years.
Yeah, pretty strong team.
Very strong. I could see a lot of them going pro.
All right, let's wrap it up. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah.